since I live about 300 feet from this unit, between 2010 and today, at no time has there been a occupant of that unit that is in compliance with the deed restriction. My further concern is that there has been little or no attempt at enforcing the deed restriction. Based on Cora requests, I now know that when the current owner took possession of the property in 2014, one time in 2014, the unit was brought into compliance, apparently, although I don't think it really was in compliance based on the family requirement and the deed restriction. But between 2014 and 2020, there was absolutely no attempt, based on a Cora request, at APCHA enforcement or in the owner's compliance with the deed restrictions. In 2020, I filed an inquiry, and for a brief time in 2020, there was alleged to be a qualified occupant of that unit. Once again, I don't think it met the deed restriction requirements for a blood-related family, you know, the people that were qualified were a collection of individuals that happened to work for the owner's restaurant, and you know, I have my serious doubts about whether or not they were qualified, or whether in fact they occupied the unit for the ensuing 2 years as represented by the owner. The further disturbing point about all this is that the unit has been occupied by the owner of the building. So this very valuable, you know, there's $1 million asset to the community, and it hasn't been held in compliance. And when I asked that enforcement actions be taken, the city and APCHA have acknowledged that the unit is out of compliance, but the city attorney, who has taken over enforcement, has made it very clear that he has no interest in enforcing, you know, what is 8 or 10 years worth of deed restriction violations. And that is, you know, absolutely an affront to somebody, to the entire community, that these extraordinarily valuable assets are not occupied by the people that are intended for them to be occupied by. And so, in my experience, if this is how there is little or no enforcement for one unit, how can I, as a community member, be confident that the 3,000 units are being appropriately occupied for the benefit of our community? So I ask you to review this particular situation. Here again, the city is on the cusp of wiping out this deed restriction with absolutely no penalty whatsoever to the owner. That's just wrong. But I ask you, as a member of this community, to improve your enforcement efforts to ensure that these units are occupied by qualified members of our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We will follow up with staff. And one of the things in these meetings is we try not to do is try not to discuss specifics of individual enforcement cases. But on those lines, just to share, I think something that this board's been working on, one of the things that we've recently implemented is just more transparency and reporting of complaints. So if somebody does report a complaint, making the status of that complaint readily available on, you know, publicly on the website. What I have seen happen several times is there have been there's complaints made for, you know, an anonymous complaint on the website, and you know, if there may be some extenuating circumstance that allows that so that owner is not out of compliance, right? And so oftentimes the reporting party doesn't understand that the nuances of the case, and so one of the things that we've done is to try and make that information available online. So we take enforcement very, very seriously. I mean, it sounds like if the city attorney has taken over, I mean, it sounds like this has been pretty fully investigated. Kelly, do you want to?
Well, I just have a question. If I understand correctly, is this a unit for which they're applying to have the deed restricted removed altogether with forgiveness of violations?
Very belatedly.
Okay.
You know,
Well,
They've been out of compliance
right.
for years.
It's just, so I just want, because it's
Yeah.
a different profile than a current unit that's ongoing, but like they want to get rid of the deed restriction on this. They're requesting the city to remove this deed restriction.
Yeah, they
right?
made that request in 2014, and they
Okay.
secured the right. But the obligation was always to have it be occupied
Mm-hmm.
in compliance with the deed restriction until the moment in time in which the deed restriction is removed.
Right.
And and you know that's what should have been done. The deed restriction is still there, so in my opinion, as of today, until the moment in time that that deed restriction is removed, it should be in compliance.
No, I understand that. I guess for staff, I'd love a little clarity on,
The release of the deed restriction was recorded today,
okay, without
based on
a notice
the-
of violation for prior.
It's a,
It's a closed case, but there was
Yeah.
a notice of violation. We had tenants in it from 2020 to 2022. And the city's attorney's office has been handling it, not APCHA, because it was a violation of a deed restriction that the attorney's office, the city managed,
Right.
not APCHA. So it was out of our,
So it wouldn't have applied to the
Right.
same fees, violation fee schedule that we have in
Correct.
place in our regulations.
I disagree. The deed restriction clearly says it's subject to all of APCHA's rules and regulations, and by fees and whatnot. All of that was completely enforceable. The city attorney, for reasons that are so far beyond me, made just let the owner off for free and for nothing, and that is wrong.
Yeah,
that
I
is just
understand.
wrong.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah,
this.
Mike, I want to thank you for coming in and simply say I really can't respond in the voice of or the accuracy of the city attorney, but I expect an explanation to all of council with that release or whatever action was taken today. I, wasn't given a heads up about that or anything more that it was being looked into. But I wanted to let you know that APCHA had been advertising for a period of time, but has now hired a compliance officer who will be solely on compliance, whereas in the past it was kind of split with Bethany's time and other items. And so that issue is being taken very, very seriously, and we're trying to double check all the units. And I would say, I know I've mentioned it to Matthew and others that now that, our new director's been here, is it a year now? About a year?
you're in
A little more
Yeah.
than a year. But
October.
we're,
You're-
and as Carson has said, trying to give transparency to the public about what we're doing to follow up on any complaints or asks to look into things. But it's the scattered site units that are most difficult to track down and to obscure and make sure they're following the rules. And that's what I think the focus of the coming year is going to be with APCHA staff as well as other, now that we have a full compliance officer. So, but that's all I want to say was thank you for coming in. And scattered sites, I'm concerned about a few of them throughout the community, frankly. And
Was-
older deed restrictions that were written a little more like Swiss cheese.
Yeah. Did the city request a recommendation from APCHA on releasing this deed restriction?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
The correspondence I have
That's
asked for
unfortunate.
consent.
It sounds like it was outside of kind of our APCHA holdings, but would a situation like this be under the biennial affidavit, and was someone signing that?
This was a rental
It's a
unit.
rental unit.
They don't do the biennial.
Got it.
Would Home Track help us catch this going forward?
Yes, from a perspective of requalifying of tenants or knowing when leases are up, because a tenant has to requalify every 2 years. So
Do we have a way to
track?
track these kind of one-off rental units? I mean,
Yeah, they're in
yeah,
home track,
yeah.
so we check through that, and Maddie goes through and looks at who's in need of requalifying or whose units we don't have tenants in, and so we reach out to the owners at that time. Certainly at the time that this started, we did not have home track, and we're not working on the same system. So yes, moving forward, we should be in a better position to catch these in a quicker situation.
thanks, Mike.
I'm going to distribute to you the city attorney's notation that he's making no attempt at enforcement, and sounds like it's a done deal as of today. And this is, it's 2 pages each, but it's an acknowledgement of that APCHA has been aware of this issue since 2014.
All right, any other public comment?
Any online?
Online? Tom?
Just to mention, we should probably deal with it now in case there's anybody in the audience who wants to comment, but we are asking the board to continue the last two items on the agenda. The executive session that's scheduled for 4:15 and the public hearing on the Highlands Villas appeal.
Okay,
The board will have to take that action, but I think, there isn't at this point among the parties and the staff any disagreement about granting the continuance.
okay,
So people are welcome to stay, but I thought if somebody was actually waiting to talk, they may want to reconsider. Also, we need to ask the board for a different executive session at the end of the meeting.
okay.
Cindy, do you have that written down?
Yes, I have that language that you provided.
Okay, and this is in connection with a purely procedural issue that I would like to advise the board on. That is the subject matter is an appeal by Dr. David Singer of a recent decision of the hearing officer. And we need to, the process of that appeal, not anything to do with the merits of the appeal.
Okay,
So I would request that the board
I find that wasn't noticed.
formally add that to that executive session to the agenda. You don't need to move to go into executive session until that time, but if you would agree to add that to the agenda, I'd appreciate it.
Tom, I think we have a little bit of a legal question from the table. Is it sufficient to add that to the agenda when it wasn't noticed as an item on the agenda?
Yes, it's not an action item for the board. It's a consultation on, for the purpose of legal advice and getting direction from the board. And that's not no formal decision of the board is required. So it's not, executive sessions can be, you can, in the middle of a meeting, you can ask to go into executive session on a legal question.
For advice from your attorney.
I appreciate the question, but that limitation would only apply if it were a regular agenda.
Okay, thank you so much.
thank you, Tom. No other public comment? Okay,
It's a funny small thing, but it strikes me that a lot of time under either the executive director's comments or the early part of the, kind of pro forma part of the meeting, you'll have a section that says agenda amendments. And then, if there are any, you take them forward or you don't. But you always have a space for that as something that helps keep order in the meeting, just for future consideration.
okay, thank you. All right. So next we'll move to Board of Directors comments, and we'll start online with John. John, do you have any comments?
I didn't ask Mike this, but there was something in that deed restriction about a blood relative. What would be the point of putting something that obscure into a deed restriction?
We didn't do it.
This deed restriction was done a long time ago.
It is begging for non-compliance.
It's actually not that uncommon. I mean, a lot of places will have housing codes that require familial
Bonds.
units in order to all live together in a place. And that prevents, having a bunch of unrelated people to whatever maximum amount cohabitating in one unit. So
John, that was an extremely, I'll just go ahead and say unique deed restriction. It wasn't written with us in mind. The enforcement rested with the city, not with APCHA. So it was really, it's a very unique situation, which was very difficult to deal with, but the enforcement action did rest according to the restriction with the city of Aspen.
And the deed restriction was done in 1992, and they satisfied the requirements with regard, using the Affordable Housing Credit Program. So they did have to buy 3 Category 2 credits for this, just to let you know.
Yeah, Mike came to my office at one point, brought it up, but begs for non-compliance when you get into a situation where kids move away, right? Adults age and kids move away, and you either gonna have an empty unit or not, you're gonna rent it to somebody that doesn't qualify for it. So anyway, that was all my comment. I just wanted to clarify it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Allison.
I'm curious about the, I guess, passing of the torch of Skippy and Rachel, because I don't want them to go unhonored. This is not your last meeting, or
This is my last APCHA meeting.
Okay, I think that's pretty significant. And so I'd like to take a moment. Skippy and Rachel have both been incredibly valuable advocates of housing in our community, but especially as members of this board, and me coming on years after them and guiding the conversation and how deeply you've both thought about this. So that's a huge loss. Thank you so much for your time on this board.
Thank you, Allison.
It does, and then I guess we'll get 2 city council replacements the next meeting.
Yeah, the next Tuesday, the 11th, will be my last meeting with City Council. And it's a somewhat of a split meeting. There may be a few small business items for the old council to finish up, and then we will leave. and then the new people, and then the new people get sworn in. And then I think one of the first things they'll talk about is their board assignments.
Okay.
And have discussion and debate or whatever horse trading happens, and that will be done in time for you guys next meeting.
Okay, well, you don't have to read anything into this, but along with that, there is still an open community seat on the board, so I hope we're still advertising for that and get a good, solid person to
Civilian.
round us out.
I'll think about that, and I appreciate the thought.
Thank you so much for your leadership. Then also, I think Carson just mentioned, we did, as a board, direct some system of becoming more transparent with those compliance reported, the anonymous, especially tips online, but we have not actually enacted a way of sharing that yet.
On the
And so
website.
On the website.
I was poking around. Can you direct me or the public as to how you would find that?
Yeah.
Yes. It's under compliance, and I can send it. It's on our website, and it's gonna take me a minute to find it. If you want to keep talking, I can circle back.
Okay, thank
How's
you.
that?
That's great to know then, just for the record, that is available, and maybe in the minutes we do a link or something as to how to find that.
If you click on compliance and education,
So I don't even see that.
and go to, it's at the very top. It's in the yellow.
Ooh.
If you click on the compliance and education at the top, and then you go to compliance cases,
Thank you.
and it's 4.1 is the update. Although,
Something
yeah.
around here. Okay.
so it looks like right now we've got 23 cases that are showing on
Okay,
here. Out of 23, we have 4 that are currently under investigation. We have 4 that are open out of compliance, and all of those are, it says deceased is the,
The owner is deceased,
owner
and
is
we're waiting for
deceased.
it to transfer to a new owner.
and then the rest of these, the rest are were closed
Okay.
because they were found to be in compliance.
This is a great little worksheet. Thank you. And I think underlines how happy we are to have a new compliance assistant in the department, because that is
So
pretty.
A lot of foreshadowing going on in this meeting.
Yeah.
I think I don't
That's
have
kinda
anything.
hidden. Can we get that like front and center on the website? Sorry, Allison. Should be a right front page, shiny red
Front
light.
page, yeah, bold letters, compliance case status.
I mean,
I kept trying to bury it.
Maybe just under the news, so for a month or two until it gets bumped off.
I'll mention it in the newsletter.
Well, we can-
That's, but that's notable.
Well, and we have the
Yeah.
press covering this meeting. I bet they will be willing to highlight the new compliance page, you know?
And I do think it helps if you were to be watching this meeting and see one member of the public complain that people are out of compliance, and that becomes a broader narrative that everyone's out of compliance. This is exactly the reason we have that sheet on the board, right? Sometimes you think someone's out of compliance and they're not, and actually, I'm sure by the end of the year we look at this, that might be more often than not, and it still costs staff time to look into it. So I think it's worth adding to the narrative.
And it's updated the first of every month, and it's replaced with the new version,
Okay.
just so.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think
Anthony?
in that specific instance, I mean, the notable thing there is 23 cases, and 17 out of the 23 were found to be in
Great.
compliance.
Right.
Also 20, like that's a
And-
case a day.
Carson, some of those that are found to be in compliance, if you look on the right, some of them are actually sold, so they're now in compliance.
Oh.
But they were out of compliance at the time, but the unit has now been returned back into compliance. So I think there's 3. I'm not looking at the report anymore, but I think there was 3
Yeah,
on
there
there
is,
that
you're
was
right.
sold. So I think that's a good.
Well, no, and then, yeah, so then I see there was a roommate not approved situation
Yeah.
that was brought back into compliance. So,
Exactly.
yeah, this is great.
And the compliance analyst is going to be taking responsibility for packaging that nicely, and we're going to, part of the auditing as well. So there's a lot of work we can do to make this information more accessible.
Great. Maybe Matthew, I don't know if anyone's planning on talking about the regional housing summit. I don't have any specific comments, but I do wonder where and how APCHA can assist, or more specifically, I guess, more selfishly, how APCHA board will be involved in any future regional conversations, and that I'm happy to be part of those, as well as concentrate on our local regulations here in Aspen and Pitkin County. So that's it for now. I'm sure I have lots to say later in the meeting.
You know, I can only say that Diane Foster is the representative for the city council on that effort. And so we don't have an individual council member person. And so I don't know if we've been invited or asked
Really?
as APCHA. All the members put in $10,000 each to begin the effort. And so I think there was some support.
Absolutely, for the
between
Regional
city and
Housing Coalition, but I'm talking about the broader conversation that summit launched, as far as
Yeah,
a couple
okay.
different ways
Okay,
of
I'm
speaking
sorry,
about
I was
regional.
confusing the
Yes.
two. I don't know that there is a convening group afterwards.
Yeah, there were 3 working groups that people were sort of invited to self-select their interest on. That I haven't received any additional feedback yet on how those working groups
And,
might continue to convene. And
I thought the housing summit was
solve.
great, but that was a week's worth of work squeezed into a day. So it was
Yeah.
very hard to digest it. I know they want to do it again next year, so hopefully we'll have a bit more of a lead-up time before that, so it can be some more actionable items. But I think what they really showed is just the power of convening, getting everybody together. I think that was the most important thing, was the fact that everybody got together. And if that happens again next year, it'll be even better, but it's going to be an ongoing conversation. But as Rachel and Kelly said, as part of the Regional Housing Coalition, that is Diane who's taking the lead on that. So we haven't been particularly involved. We're contributing along with Liz to some of the discussions, but we haven't been like a seat at the table, because that's not the role for us.
You know, I really enjoyed the summit as well, and I thought a lot of good ideas came out, and the convening and the partnership, and it may have shaken a few impressions that, it's only Aspen's problem and Aspen's the whole problem. As I was saying earlier in the meeting, if the long bill for the state of Colorado is allocating $9.1 million to the Department of Corrections, so they can give $1,000 a month stipend to the prison workers in Canyon City, Sterling, and Buena Vista. And so, I mean, that shows it's everywhere, because Aspen didn't influence Buena Vista or Sterling or Canyon City. So
you're
I
not sending our prisoners there.
yeah, probably not. And so it just really struck me that it may have helped disabuse that issue, that it's only Aspen who needs it and wants it, and so on and so forth. But what it also pointed out is, how different all the regions are and the communities are. And so you have the issue of, are you regulating STRs and limiting them, or you're not? Are you do you have a housing funding source or not? Are you approving 90% of your new growth to be free market second homes, or are you requiring 40 or 50% to be deed restricted housing, or not? And so trying to mesh everyone's unique needs and balance that is going to take a lot more time. I mean, that's like a multi-year formation of a RAFTA type of effort. And I think we saw concurrently from Dave Myler and the group that started with the larger housing survey and needs assessment, they've gotten some money from the state, but in terms of knowing what they can do with it that's actionable early on, is let's try to buy down some $800,000 homes to $650 and see if we can get people in. And that's about all that they're able, quote, to do regionally at this time. And they've decided that the idea of forming a regional authority was just way too big an ask and way too complicated in many ways. But I think there's a lot of working together that still can happen. And I've said it at my table at the council. One of the things that really came out pretty thoroughly from this was how far do people commute to work, how close can you work to, live to your work, and how living close to where you work starts to create a community instead of everyone coming from so far away. I've said, hey, I'd be happy to see the city continue to support regional efforts and put some significant, $2 million into regional efforts. But at the same time, we need to focus on housing for workers that are close to their work and close in. So we'll see where it goes, but that's a good follow-up. And if Habitat for Humanity thought we had a place with them or wanted a board member from this, they can reach out to us.
I would chime in a little bit. I will say that the as much as maybe doesn't always feel that way here, there wasn't a lot of bashing about APCHA or pointing to APCHA's weaknesses mean we can't make this, we can't work on this solution until these things are resolved. I don't feel like there was any dialogue related to that, which can really feel like an impediment with specific issues or in more localized conversations up valley. So I'm glad for that there continues to be a recognition of the importance of solving or contributing to solutions to housing, even as we improve upon how we've managed it over the last 40 years, personally. So look forward to that. I will encourage people to support the city's lumberyard project as it comes. I popped into their planning and zoning hearing last night just on a whim, and I think that will be more meaningful when it gets to the new city council for a vote at the end of May and June. So I wanted to flag that for people as well.
Okay, Allison, is that
Oh, yeah, I thought we had moved.
You sparked a whole conversation.
Kelly?
I'm good. Thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, well, let's see. This is my last APCHA meeting as a city council member. This transition has been perhaps a little tougher than I thought it would be, and there's a lot of good friends in the room and people who I admire and appreciate that I'm going to miss working with. I thought that coming back from a Club 20 meeting not long ago, long drive, you get to think, I was like, there's a lot of parts of this I'm really going to miss, and an ability to make a difference. But I also have a lot of trust and faith in our community to stand to the right things, the people who are on this board working to try to move things forward. And I'll be really brief here, but we live in an imperfect world. Humans are imperfect. Government is imperfect. Systems are imperfect. we strive for perfection, and we strive for excellence, and we strive to constantly improve. And it's only by reviewing and looking at things and saying, well, that's a hole, and that's a mistake, that's a crack in the system, that we can do it. But don't get upset that it's not perfect, because it never, ever will be, no matter what. The second is, after reading the 670-page packet for the hearing that got postponed, I just want to say I'm so glad that this agency has a hearing officer. And I just want to point out how challenging these points of law that were in that document were. The meaning of may, the meaning of option, going back to a settlement and a settlement before then, going back to state law and restated state law. I can clearly see how this board, without a hearing officer, got so bogged down in the past that it never had a chance to work on policies, whether it was Lee's case or other cases. The role of a hearing officer is difficult. It is not easy. It is something that they need to be both highly familiar with our community, pass zoning laws, pass development approvals, and able to sort through those sort of documents, as well as current APCHA regulations. And I think that was so much the right move, and I think that's part of why this board has been able to make more progress. All those cases are not coming to us immediately in the first round. And it's important to note that this board would never be the final authority. Anyone can take the decision of this board and take it to court to still say they did not get due process or it was wrongly decided. So that has been a great move. I think that, as I've talked about in the meeting before, and you guys have a retreat coming up, the one thing to try to really tackle, and I'm not saying you'll reach perfection, but you might narrow the gap, is what is literally a structural deficit within our ownership programs. When it costs X to produce and sell to someone with an income capped at Y, and then expect the physical construction to be maintained up at that level, it just starts to, in some instances it's close to impossible when it's a category 2. In other instances, it's probably quite manageable. But the example I've tried to use in explaining this to my council is, if we look at the rental projects that we have, and they're all obtaining the maximum rent they're allowed by category, and yet we still end up putting general fund money in to make the repairs, because it's not enough. It doesn't add up to enough to do the full repairs for the Truscott or do the full repairs on the others. And if collecting full rent at category for these units, professionally managed, isn't working in a rental scenario, how do we expect it to be working in the HOA managed by civilians and not professionals and not necessarily understanding? So how we find the ways to create a safer system, and a system that just is fair, acknowledges the challenges, isn't creating windfalls for people, isn't allowing people to ignore their real obligations. I find that those to be the very important things for this board to be tackling. And it continues to be something that more and more coordination than ever will make sense. More coordination with the city as we clean up older scattered site deed restrictions, or look at how the monies are invested. Greater coordination with the county, as they really outlined for us last night at our joint meeting, the number of different housing opportunities that are out there, and some of the challenges they have, and where Phillips Curve project is going, and what it blossoms into over time is a lot of stuff. And the county is thinking about whether to go forward with a funding measure this fall, or whether they should do it in 2024. I don't know which, but one way or the other, the continued coordination and increased connections is really going to be valuable, and the regional valley, of course. And we just have to keep paying attention to what the state's doing. Right now, they're on a course that kind of says, hey, if we just unleash the power of development and get rid of all planning and zoning boards, we'll solve the problem, you know? And that's a little scary alternative. So we'll keep working on it, but do pay attention to state legislation and what Dole is doing and how we can influence when federal legislation on Fair Housing Act and things like that is coming up. It's up to us to tell our county reps, hey, you need to get some legislation introduced to do this, or we really need a modification on that legislation to do what we need. So you guys are the ones who are feeding Kelly from Colorado Counties Inc. or our future Colorado Municipal League members what we need when we need legislation, or when we have legislation to fight that's gonna undercut us. So thank you very much, and it's just been a pleasure to serve with all of you. Thank you.
Well, I remember thinking after our first meeting, I remember thinking, my goodness, she talks a lot.
And you was right.
But you know, I very quickly found out it's because you're an encyclopedia for local housing knowledge. I mean, I think without your history, your 40 years or plus years of community service, you know, this would be a very different program. So you are a wealth of knowledge. You will leave a big hole in the board when you leave. And I hope we can still call on you as an expert witness from time to time. So
Every now and then, I'll do what I can.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you.
All right. We will move to Executive Director's comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matthew Gillen, the Executive Director. I'd also like to echo those thanks from staff to both Rachel and Skippy for all your wonderful work over the past few years. You've made my entry into APCHA very easy, so thank you so much for that. I'd also like to introduce our new compliance analyst, Jackie Marinaro, who's over there. Say hi, Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
Jackie has a Bachelor of Arts from Boston College and a JD from the Ohio State University, and has been working from 2007 until last Friday as an attorney and analyst for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So we think she's qualified for this position. We're very excited to have Jackie join us as a compliance analyst. So welcome to Jackie. And a few other things I just wanted to hit. I did speak at the Housing Summit briefly, which was good. And then Allison was kind enough to invite me to the APCHA Board of Directors meeting 2 weeks ago, I love going out and talking at these things. So if you're listening and you'd like me to come to talk to a particular event, I'd love to do that and just explain what APCHA is up to and what we're trying to do, and just remind people what we're doing. So that was really fun. We are having a tenants coffee next week for Trustcott, and I believe we invited ACI as well. ACI as well. And we're doing that next week on Tuesday from 7:30 a.m. till 9, and we're doing coffee and cronuts, and staff will be available to chat, and we're hoping that we'll get a good attendance, and we're trying to find new ways to reach out to tenants to help solve their problems and show our faces. And HOAs will be next on the list. Excuse me.
Were people just invited through a letter? Or?
Yeah, we zapped it out, I think yesterday, and we'll follow up again next week. And we're putting
And we posted it.
and we posted it, and we're putting a physical sign up outside the door. So that'll be fun. And the cronuts from Sweet Colorado down in Glenwood, and they are delicious. We brought them in a couple weeks ago for the staff. They were addictive. The other thing I wanted to mention was also at the beginning of this week, we sent out the ownership affidavit, and we've already had about 40% replies, right?
I can break it down. So the standard one, the one that goes to the majority, we've had a response rate of 45%, which is 586 back. The row houses get their own. We've had just about 40% returned, which is 5. Lazy Glen, we're at 20%, so about 21 out of 100. And Aspen Village, we're at 37%, 56 out of 150. So we're 3 days in. These are pretty great numbers.
It's the end
So-
of the month, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good numbers. So we'll, Maddie was very nice and sent it out for us on Monday morning, and we'll send it out every 2 weeks. And I'm sure we'll have to end up bothering some people with postings, but we'll do the best we can.
Does that go out in Spanish?
It does not. We've never sent it out in Spanish.
I think you might need to in Lazy Glen.
It's actually a good point, Kelly. We can work on that for Lazy Glen specifically, because that's a separate survey. See what the
That's a really good
response is.
idea. Thank you for
Just
doing
from my door knocking
that. Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
And then I just had one clarification. I just want to keep harping on this, is that when you're doing your 1,500 hours, you're working full-time from an APCHA property to qualify, you working for a company not in Pitkin County, working remotely for someone outside Pitkin County, that does not count. There's been some mention in the press about that, and I just want to make it very clear that you have to work in Pitkin County. We are looking at the regulations just to make that a bit more clear, but working remotely, nothing to do with Pitkin County, absolutely does not count as work for the regulations, and we make that very clear when we are doing people's qualifications and requalifications. So,
Thank you.
that's it.
Cindy?
I forgot something, and I have a question for Matthew. I think we are trying to schedule with APCHA to
Yeah.
come to the BOCC
Oh, great. Yeah.
on the grant
Yeah,
program, the emergency grant program. So I just want to keep
we do it. Once
Building
you
mo-
approve
so-
it here, we'll reach out to both bodies to get that on the agenda.
Okay. I think, yeah, I do think our board might have some input.
Yep.
So I don't want us to
No,
get too
once-
far down the line at the APCHA
once-
board before the BOCC
Okay.
has some eyes on it. Yeah, so I think we just need to coordinate with staff
Yeah,
to
we'll
find
do that.
time. And that we have some time on our schedules. So thank you. No. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Cindy?
Cindy?
And with regards to, say, we did have a bid period that ended today. We had a lottery on Monday, and we have one unit that the bid period ends next week, so please check our website again under notifications, or sign up for notifications. And we have another one that I believe that we're adding on this next week, I believe. So it's really important that you sign up for those notifications so that you, especially if you want to purchase, if you have any questions with regards to the paperwork or anything like that, you can always call the office as well. So please do so. We do have our regulations online, but again, we know that they are long, and if you need kind of a quick answer, do not hesitate to contact the Housing Authority.
Just a question, Cindy. With springtime coming up, ski season ending, do you often get some turnover of leases in, say, the longer-term rentals like Truscott?
Not really anymore.
Yeah.
People really are here, and once they have housing lined up, they pretty much want to stay and continue to work full-time and live in the area. So we don't get a lot of turnover.
Okay,
And
I was just kind of
it's-
wondering.
yeah. And we don't have any available short-term housing either for the summer, because the Meroldt and the Burlingame seasonal, they
Go to the
house the
MAA.
MAA students. So that's one of the things, we get people who are in Meroldt who say, can't we stay? And it's like, we're really sorry, you can't.
Yeah.
So so that's something that we start to see when people are starting to move out. A lot of people have to leave the area, but there are some that decide this is a beautiful place to live and stay, and they try to find something more permanent that they can stay in. So
Do we know what a SKICO does with their winter housing options in the summer?
they will open them up, but they fill up pretty quickly. But I do believe that they open them up to other people besides if. They do have some summer people that come back that they put
Sure.
into them, but I think that if they have some vacancies and stuff like up in Snowmass, and somebody's just working someplace else, they will, and it's a vacancy, they will put them in for the summer months.
How do people look for those?
What they call the ski company?
They call SKICO.
Yeah.
This is, I think it'd be great if we had like a housing repository, you know?
We have a one-page sheet that we give out that has the contact numbers for all the different scattered, not the one-offs, but like a Castle Ridge or a
Sure.
Ute or a Copper Horse, Centennial,
Okay. Thank you.
and Skiko. So.
Very good.
All right. We will move to the consent calendar. Do we need to split these?
I'd like to.
Okay. So first item on the consent calendar, the minutes of the March 1st, 2023 regular meeting. Any additions, changes?
I was not at that meeting, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second.
Oh, sure, happily.
All right, it's a roll call vote.
Okay. Allison?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Rachel abstained.
Yeah.
Carson?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
And I think this next item might be one that was discussed prior, because I have no background on it. And I think for the public, perhaps a little bit of introduction before voting on it would make sense.
Along those lines, maybe I also missed a meeting, but I don't remember discussing it, and I think it could have been addressed in a staff memo, a couple sentences, if we didn't want to pull it.
Yeah, it just has the action. It doesn't
Right.
have the why.
And this, 215, you know that we got in the foreclosure. So we bought, we bought, that property was bought with the foreclosure money that is put set aside from the 150 fund. And what APCHA is asking for is, for that property, there is a huge past due amount for the Woody Creek Metro District, which takes care of all the, infrastructure. And there's also a monthly fee for that, so that additional amount is to take care of that, along with past due property taxes that were on that property that were not paid. With regards to 213 Woody Creek, there was, the owner passed away, and we are working with the father of the owner to purchase that property. They are two pieces of property that are right by each other. They are two really phenomenal opportunities for us to put new structures on the place. And that's what our goal is. That's what APCHA's goal is to put 2 new structures on that place and then sell them to qualified employees when they're completed.
So remember when we discussed a program.
With Woody Creek.
Yeah.
This is the way for us to do this, and because we
And we-
got one through foreclosure and
Exactly.
we're getting, yeah.
Okay, so we kind of always knew we did have first right of refusal anyway, especially if something's dilapidated. We can take that first right of refusal, because typically, if this was a mobile home that looked okay, it would go into lottery right now. And instead,
Correct.
we want to own it
And
first.
the owner of 213 passed away. His father is the one and has reached out to APCHA and asked us to buy it because he wants it off of his hands as quick as possible. So we are.
And this is our way of not putting it on a community member to buy something that
Correct.
is not inhabitable or that needs,
Correct.
Correct.
that we'd rather give them a 30-year lifespan on than a 3-year lifespan on.
Exactly.
So I mean, in my view, this is a successful pilot program of whatever we were calling that.
Don't call it that.
That's what we
Goes
think.
bankrupt.
That's what we're hoping for, the end result is gonna show.
And, well, I'll just say, because these are very willing sellers, so there's some less willingness to engage with APCHA from other neighbors in that community. What is the deal with the payments from the dues? Why wouldn't that come out of like proceeds from the sale to that?
Well, and what'll happen it's to get them all caught up, because it's gonna take us a year, 2 years. And the Metro District, because they have infrastructure costs, they need
Yeah,
the
they need
funds
that
to
money,
pay
sure.
for things that they're trying to redo on the property. This is a pretty big hit for them.
Have they put
So
a lien
that's-
on this?
Yes, they put a lien on the property, and And we bought it, and it is a junior lien, and but it's still part of the Metro District, so it's still, I still believe that this is something that has to be paid off. Because it is for that piece of property,
And it's the right thing.
and it's the right thing to do.
Right, but I guess, I think what you're saying is like, why wouldn't that be netted out of proceeds at
Exactly.
sale?
It
Well,
would,
Well,
it
it
will
would
be
be.
down the
Will,
road.
got it.
Yeah,
when we
no
turn-
matter what, we will include this in when we do go to sell the property so that we can be made whole. That's what our hope is this is a category 5 property, the maximum for this is 600 and something thousand. We're hoping in the end that we'll be able to break even on this,
But
and
why
that is
isn't
to
the
recoup these
estate
costs.
playing it
Right,
instead of
right.
the future owner?
This is so the 32,000 for past due is for 215, the one we bought through foreclosure. So
Oh, okay.
there is no,
There's
Got
nothing to
there's
write out
nothing
of.
estate
Right.
to
Got it.
pay it out.
Got it.
The other is all caught up. The
213 is
the
all
father
caught up.
for 213 has paid all the past due stuff on that. So what we would be buying it for is pretty much what the maximum price was as of the death of his son.
And we did not pay maximum price in a foreclosure.
Correct.
Right.
We paid what was due.
Okay, thank you. That all sounds good.
Okay.
And this is not a public hearing?
No, you don't need a public
No,
hearing
it's
on
just a
this.
consent
This is just
calendar.
appropriating funds from your 632 fund to purchase this, because it's coming out of the 632 fund. And just in case you wanted to know what we have in the 632 fund, we currently, because I wanted to make sure if anybody asked that, we currently have 1.283, almost $1.3 million in cash. And we have inventory of property that you own of a little over $767,000. So in essence, our fund balance is over $2 million.
Does this ever come to public hearing for this type of expenditure? when
No,
we
because
buy
this
property?
is money that is in control of the APCHA board. Not the city council,
Right,
not the Board of
okay.
County
And our
Commissioners.
rules don't require
It's,
it.
no, it's
Okay.
the APCHA board that controls this fund.
Got it. Thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, just to be clear on that, Cindy's right. This is the appropriation of funds is an administrative action, not quasi judicial or legislative. Now, that doesn't mean you can't let people comment on it, but if someone shows up and wants to, but there's no requirement for public hearing with the appropriation of funds.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Anyone like to make a recommendation to approve?
Oh, yeah, I'll move to approve resolution number 3 appropriating up to $300,000 for the purchase of property located at 213 Woody Creek and up to $32,000 for payment of past due Woody Creek Metro District dues for 215 Woody Creek.
I'll second.
Can I just do a moment of discussion?
Sure.
I appreciate the way you've explained it, that it's essentially an investment, since these will be sold at a future time. I think it's a great idea to be improving the stock while we can. And I probably would have approved it on consent with just a slightly more explanation in the staff memo in the future.
Yeah.
So yes, sorry, I don't know if we're doing roll call.
No, and I really would back you up on that because it's for the members of the press or other people who get the packet and may or may not attend the whole meeting, so they know what's going on, and that's good.
I will make sure that if this happens in the future, that more is stated in the memo.
Okay,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Okay, so we've got roll call vote.
Okay, Allison?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Carson?
Yes.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to the public hearing on resolution number 2, series 2023, approving changes to APCHA regulations. So we'll go ahead and open it up. Is there any public comment on, this is second reading, any public comment on the changes to the APCHA regulations?
Resolution number 2, series of 2023.
Yes.
It's just for formal thing. It's a resolution of the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority Board of Directors approving a pilot right-sizing program as an amendment to the APCHA regulations, as resolution number 2, series of 2023.
No public comment in the room, not seeing any online.
I have a question for staff.
Question for
Have people
staff.
been calling you about this at all?
In the beginning, yes. When you first started talking about it, I haven't had a phone call in probably 2.5 months.
Okay. And when do you think this will launch?
So if you approve it, we can set a date. I think we talked about last time setting a date almost a month out so that we had the opportunity to put some notice on our website and kind of send out some blasts via email so that people knew it was happening.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
And just as a footnote to this, it doesn't change this at all, but the city council heard the request to have 5 units at the Burlingame 3 sales project be available for right sizing, and the council agreed to support that.
Awesome.
So that's a different part of the project, or program perhaps.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how that
Works out.
works out.
Now, will we need to change our regulations so that that goes outside the lottery, since it's not a owner-to-owner
There
swap?
was a complicated process worked out that I can't
Okay.
relate right
Yeah.
now, but they sorted something out about it.
And we'll make sure that when they go to lottery, everything that gets put into place is properly accounted for in our system.
All right.
Yeah, there's a little more time
Yeah, yeah, for
available,
sure.
fortunately.
Thank
Great.
you.
I
Okay,
just have
so,
like a procedural question
Sure.
as well. Why, if this is a pilot program, why is it regulation changes right now?
We just
Because
have-
Tom said so.
Yeah. No, we just, I think it was 2 meetings ago.
Yeah.
It was, if not last, yeah, it was 2 meetings ago. We decided that the cleanest way to go about it was to put it in the APCHA regulations and
Well-
have it go through a first and second reading. If not, it didn't have to go through any of that. But
Right.
we all thought it was the best and most public way to notice it and to do this approach.
Tom, you can jump in.
Thanks, Carson.
Yeah, briefly, there are in the rules now, several exemptions from the lottery and bid process. And as we looked at this, someone on the board, I don't remember who raised the question, should we be putting this in the regulations? And when I thought about it, I thought, we're creating an exemption, even though it's only gonna have limited applicability for those who participate, it is another exemption. So we thought it would be a good idea to put it in the regulations. And in addition, what we found in writing it up was that we were able to be a lot more specific in writing about how that pilot program will work, so that everybody gets advance notice and can understand how we're going to run that. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you for that explanation. I guess to me, I am disappointed that we don't have a lot of public hearings, and so that there hasn't actually been a lot of public input. I think we will learn the kinks of this program by launching it, and then if there are items that need tweaking, it's a whole regulation change again with a first and second reading. So that's one concern of mine in making it so formal right now. I guess also, so if I understand your explanation, I don't know if we want to call it something like to the right sizing pilot program of 2023. Like, when are we out of pilot program and into normal program? It seems like no matter what, at some point, if it's working out perfectly, it becomes normal program. It's no longer pilot, and we have to do a regulation change again. So that's just my procedural questions as to how formal we are being about this experiment.
Well, actually, if it works, you're not going to have to make any changes. You might want to.
Well, that's what I
might
was
want-
wondering, but it does say pilot program as one of the exceptions. So is it just a
That's
pilot
true.
program
It does say
indefinitely?
that. You're
Okay.
right.
So we'll
Right.
attach that. I mean, to be honest, we bring regulation changes fairly often, so it'll just get attached into one or the other.
It'll just be like a red line.
Will be a red line of something else. Right now, there's 5 in the pilot program. I
Right.
think we'll have to see if there's lots of we'll have to see if there's lots of interest or not, and then what if it's 5 a year? Maybe that's what that needs to be changed into the reg. So I do think we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
That raises, I'm sorry, just a great question, because if the city is setting aside 5 at Burlingame and 5 happen to happen through matches in the existing inventory, that would make 10 in the
Correct.
year.
Yes.
And so I don't know if we need to change the language to say.
We don't.
Because
Okay.
they're operating separately.
They're operating separately, okay, okay,
You can always tweak it later.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Well,
concerned
and
about.
I would just say, just because it's a pilot program doesn't mean we won't get sued. And
It's
have
better to
some
have it in
criteria to legally defend for how
great
decisions
point.
are made.
And that was one of the concerns of somebody who is grumpy about how they might be excluded.
They were application number 6.
Right.
Yeah, it would be better to have rules we could point to for why that happened.
Okay. It's a good
Um,
question, though.
Bethany, you mentioned interest. We did do a survey about right sizing.
Yes, we
who would
did.
be interested in some sort of exchange program. Does anybody remember what percent indicated they would be
it was-
interested?
It was a significant
Yeah, it was
number that
40 to
actually
Yeah.
said they were interested. So I think when this goes live, it's going to be interesting to see. It's very easy to answer that you're interested on a survey,
Absolutely.
especially when there are other questions tied to what it might take. So we'll have to see when this actually goes into play if this is enough. I mean, in a sense, there isn't really an incentive besides you're getting a different unit. So I'm interested just as much as you are to see what our response rate is.
Yeah. With all of those people who indicated interest, and again, the lack of public comment right now, I would hope that we can somehow reach them specifically. We also, I think it's in the minutes, we said specifically a press release going out, not just notices to people's emails. This is fun, it's exciting. So I want to make sure that we're not, but APCHA itself, when you see it in the paper, maybe isn't that exciting. So let's excite it.
Excited up.
Yeah.
And hopefully in a month, we're back here talking about if we want to do 5 more.
I don't know.
We'll see.
2 months.
2 months. Okay, any other discussion on this?
Oh, I have more.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't need to start.
I know you need to go.
Why can we do more exchanges in Lazy Glen than the rest of the?
Why can we do more? What do you mean?
Lazy Glen doesn't have a minimum occupancy requirement, so
Okay.
it doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
Neither does Aspen Village. So
so would they really be going through the exchange program?
They don't even have to list their units with us
Right.
Yeah.
for sale,
Okay.
so, yeah.
I do, and then once we approve it today, it's on staff to formulate. What does the form look like that you fill out to write to staff? It seems like there's going to be some back end administrative.
it's a Google form. We've started it.
Okay.
It will be posted on the website. They'll have to fill it out. It will flow into our APCHA Google account, and then we'll have to look at it. So it will be administrative from our end to sort through.
Does the one person send in the full form for 2, and what are the 2 timestamps? Because it feels like the first 5, it's first come first serve. That there's gonna be some administrative figuring out of when does it count that you are fully submitted. What if you submitted first, but you were missing some stuff on your application? Does number 6 get to go ahead of you? Some of those concerns I feel I'm known for overthinking, and these might be the details that staff is on, but I would warn perhaps more than a month before this is fully tested and taken care of.
We've already been working on it. I mean, the form's basically internally done, and we've been processing it and trying it out. I think it's all a C. At one point we presented a lottery to you all, and that got turned down, and so we are here with a first come first serve. That was what was the chosen path forward, so we're gonna have to see how it plays out. I think Skippy was the one who was probably correct that we're not gonna get hammered like the demolition permits all at 12:01 the moment this goes live. So I do think the first 5 folks that express interest, and are we going to go to number 6 if someone doesn't have a tax document in? No, but we're going to have to give them a time and say you need to have your taxes in 3 days. And if we don't have that, then we're going to end up going to the next person. So it's going to be things like that, how we operate normally with qualifications and making sure people have their ducks in a row. But
Great. I can't wait to hear the drama inside the APCHA. You guys can have your own like office show. And I think my biggest holdup right now is the age limit on the dependents. If you have children over 16, you don't get to be part of this program, or you don't get to choose the home size that would include them. To me, that still feels very presumptive of what kind of life you should live post high school. That you should go off, leave home, be part of college, not just enter the local workforce, not go to CMC, but want to live at home. And then it's also presuming that anyone who has kids younger aren't sending them to boarding school. Or I think we're just for this one pilot program, these 5 cases, making up a new rule that's not what we adhere by in other places, and that makes me uncomfortable. I think for the who might get left out. I mean, what if you have bad grades? What if you need to redo? Like you might be getting just as many years with someone who's 17 of a community member head in bed as someone who's 15. And so if I feel unqualified to tell you how your family makeup should progress using these regulations.
That's a great point. I can't disagree with it at all. I can only say, it's one of these things where you go right between right, and how would you or the board feel if we went through the right sizing, someone with the assets was able to go down and scoop with category 3, and then the 2 bedrooms were empty in 24 months? Forever.
Right.
Forever. We just went through the whole exercise, and they've gone to college, and then they're eventually settling in New York City. And what if 4 out of 5 that's what happens, or 5 out of 10? I mean, how do we feel then on the flip side? That was the program a failure because we move people around, but there's still empty bedrooms in 2 years?
To me, that seems inevitable, that when this happens, there will be empty bedrooms. If you're a couple who's downsizing to a 2-bedroom, one of you is going to die first, right? If you're retired and
Yeah.
if you are a family who's moving up, someone's going to college. So it's not, yes, I agree, this is not a permanent fix. I think this is an interesting place to try that age limit, I guess.
No, I know. It's a great point you're bringing up. I mean, I hadn't thought it through either way either. I'm just saying the other side of it would be, why are we even bothering to right size? Maybe it's okay that we have empty bedrooms because people are going to die and people are going to go off to college. And why are we waiving assets to try to fill those bedrooms for how long? I mean, how much of a give to gain what?
Right. And just to clarify, you can't go down in categories, in multiple
Yeah.
categories.
You can go down 1, up 1, or down 1.
Okay.
When you're
Right size.
right sizing
Down.
down.
Yeah. So
Yes.
this is a different element of the program, but I think to me that is why much more than 5, or let's see what the interest is, but is unfortunate or scary because you are skipping the line. You're someone who has never had the chance to live anywhere affordable in APCHA, let's say, now doesn't get a bid on a bedroom
That's
size
right.
that would fit their family. So someone with more income or assets gets to skip you in line, and they've already been in APCHA for 15 years. And so we can't welcome new people into the community were that to outweigh the number of lotteries per year, for instance. So that's why I get scared of making this the default at all times, and because it's not permanent.
Right.
At some point, that person's going to have an empty bedroom again.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Well, and I think that, the offset, I think for the people who are, for the trade downs, I don't know. There's no perfect solution, right? I mean, it's a trade-off at the end of the day. And I think that what we're hopeful is that we're creating movement amongst some of these units that might not otherwise hit the market, right? So not necessarily seeing it as skipping somebody in the line. If if somebody's got a 3-bedroom and it's one person in a 3-bedroom and they want to stay in there for for their life, they can, right? So I mean, again, it's trade-offs.
But they probably won't stay there as long as the new family who got to go in without the lottery system.
You never know.
You never know. I guess that gives me a thought that maybe not this time, but some sort of priority scale as far as what if you didn't find any family who would be good to right size, who have a kid who's 16 and under, but there was a family with 17 and under, as well as like would a family for a 3-bedroom, does 2 parents and a kid, are they lower priority than 2 parents, 2 kids?
They would be the same.
They're the same priority.
So then, but you're effectively not filling as many bedrooms, so I think that, I don't know how much of these are gonna come, but at some point, I guess if that is the primary goal, then there's gotta be some sort of ranking system for those things as well.
Yeah, but in our system, one person is entitled to 1 bedroom.
Right.
You don't say that a couple has to live in a 1-bedroom, and you have to have a child to get a 2-bedroom, and you have to have 2 children to have a 3-bedroom.
Right.
That a single we don't say we're only building studios for single people. You have to be 2 people to get a 1-bedroom. That's not the rule. So I mean, you just said effectively, a couple with 1 child gets a 3-bedroom, and that's wrong. And it's like, no, that's not wrong. They might have a second child.
Right.
They might have a roommate. They anything could happen. But we don't make rules that say a couple has to live in a 1-bedroom, and one person can only get a studio,
Right.
and a 3-bedroom is effectively has to be to 4 people.
But I guess that, to me, a family that has 2 children, 14, 17, one of them goes away,
Yeah.
they also could get a roommate. They also might need that. I think I think that's my biggest issue is with the age and the
cutoff.
assumptions that are there without,
Okay, I mean, yeah, and I acknowledge it's a legitimate point. A lot of times, as Peacock often says, it's a choice between right and right. Right to fill up the bedrooms, and right to try to fill up the bedrooms. But if you're cutting some people off, what about if the cutoff was 18? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, I think it does, because that matches the rest of our regulations.
Because then their kids are adults, but I'm going to live with mom and dad forever. We're a family unit. We're blood relatives. Why can't we get a 3-bedroom? We're family. So you could say, I'm 21 and I'm still living with my mom and dad. We're going to right size. We're going to move up to a 3-bedroom.
I mean, if they're in the workforce, doesn't that match our regulations? I'm
Not
just
if
saying
they're
for it to
working here.
match our yeah. Yes, if they're working here.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that you could have right sizing that doesn't fill bedrooms at all, realistically. You could have a couple with 1 child, and now they win a 3-bedroom, and that person's 18. They can live there till they're 25 with their mom and dad. They don't have to leave at all.
But what if they're a member of the workforce and we're housing a workforce to our regulations? Well, I don't understand the issue. I guess.
Because now they're qualifying for a bigger unit when they wouldn't otherwise have done that if it had been for the lower age.
If they had been part of the lottery process, they
What
would
I'm
have
saying
qualified
is if
for it.
you're taking.
And then they could have stayed there anyway. Yeah.
No, they wouldn't. It's according to our regulations, if you're 3 adults, you do not have the top priority for a 3-bedroom unit. There has to be a dependent involved. A 3-adult household would have more of a priority over a 2-adult household in a 3-bedroom. But the way our regulations read is for a 3-bedroom and for a 4-bedroom unit, a household of 2 with at least 2 dependents.
And we
For a
let those
3-bedroom unit, a household of 3 with at least 1 dependent.
And we let those dependents be up to 18.
We do.
So that's what I'm just saying
but
for it to
that's-
match our regulations.
But Allison, that's different. The reason why staff really was adamant about keeping the age at 16 was, why are we going through all of this? When somebody's downsizing in 1 year, it's gonna be right back, and we're no longer counting that as a as a unit that meets the minimum occupancy. Because, and I agree, that doesn't mean that the person's going out, but 9 times out of 10, and we have seen this in this town, I have seen more of the children leave, not come back, but leave, and then there's empty bedrooms. Now, that is not in all cases, and I 100% agree. If somebody starts working full-time and they have an 18-year-old that's working full-time, they would be counted as a 3-adult
Right.
household, but they still wouldn't have that top priority for a
Had they
three-bedroom
bid,
unit.
correct. I
Right.
understand that.
One last thing as a way to say it, I think there's a difference between getting in the lottery and winning a unit in the first place and getting into a program that offers you special perks.
Yeah.
And this is a program that offers you special perks. You don't have an asset requirement. There's a lot of special perks that go along with this program, skipping the line and things like that. If some people are excluded from a program to fill more bedrooms, then, that's unfortunate, but.
Yeah, I mean, great points. We got it's a trade-off, and we got to right. And for me, I think that if we're going to go through all of this, I do think it does make sense where to sort of set it up to where in most cases it's going to provide the most benefit. That's the way I see it. Like, right? I mean, I understand there will be exceptions that will not meet our presumptions, but trade-offs. Any other discussion on this, or? And Allison, thank you for.
Yeah.
I think that this. This is how we come to the best solutions is through discussion and through, right and right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, considering all sides of the issue. So.
And ultimately, through the experiment, right?
Yeah,
That's how
right.
we find out.
I was just going to say, and it is a pilot program, and we can modify this in the future if it really becomes an issue.
And I would just say, if anything we've all observed about APCHA is sort of you pull a thread in one place and it has some consequences that we tried to really think through but maybe didn't get right. And so having this as a limited pilot right now, I think will give us some insights that we may not have expected.
Yeah, and when we come back, we'll have hopefully 5 real examples, and we can say, this is what it looked like, and right, we'll have real world examples to say, 5 people, and here was the swap, and so hopefully that'll
Make a difference.
make a difference. Yeah. Okay. So.
Have we had the public hearing? And
Yes.
closed it? I would make a motion to approve changes to the Aspen Pitkin County housing regulations with resolution number 2, series of 2023, the right-sizing pilot program.
I'll second.
I thought we
That is
did a
provided
motion
in
and
Exhibit
seconded,
A.
but that's okay. I do have a question because Allison pointed out that I think I had requested that we refer to swaps as exchanges in updating the.
On E, Colorado
Language.
law, all approved swaps.
We can change, just make a note and we'll have that changed.
Okay, so I would request an amended motion.
Yeah, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. John, do you second the friendly amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, I second with the amendment.
Okay, and it's a roll call vote.
John,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Lily,
Yes.
Allison.
No.
Okay, we will move to the
Informational memo?
informational memo on HOA survey. As-
Originally an information memo, obviously. Okay. So, Liz Axberg, Housing Policy Analyst for the City of Aspen. So as you see, this was originally going to be just an informational only memo for you all, but we decided to give you a little bit of time in case you had any questions or wanted to provide any thoughts on it as well. So, In 2012, APCHA worked with local HOAs to conduct capital reserve studies. APCHA paid for 75% of the costs, and about 29 HOAs participated and had capital reserve studies done. So this was around 11 years ago now, and usually capital reserve studies are recommended to be conducted around every 3 to 5 years. So at APCHA, we are interested in relaunching this program and offering to pay for capital reserve studies for HOAs in Pitkin County. And there are about 50 HOAs that would probably qualify for this type of program. So it's a lot. And it's been a while since we've had consistent communication with HOAs. So that's why we think the first step in this is to just update our contact information on HOAs. In doing a brief survey, as shown here, the goal is it's really short, so that way we just encourage as many HOA leaders to fill it out as possible, get their contact information, see if they would be interested in doing a capital reserve study, and then we can make an estimate of how much that would cost, start talking about an RFP from there, and then we would have more direct communication with the current HOA leaders as well, and get more information on what's going on with them too. And also out of that, Matthew and I have talked about doing an HOA meet and greet after getting all of this contact information as well.
And I'm always willing, and I've been to a couple, but I'm always willing to go to HOA meetings, and I'd love to go to them, and I will be pushing that a little harder once we have the contact information. And as I said, we've kept this very simple. We originally threw on some stuff about, how capitalized are you? But we've deleted all that. We really want to just get that initial contact in, and then we'll follow up, and we'll be very charming, and we'll get all that information out of them later.
Yes. Who are you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I've gotten some feedback from people who I've had some feedback from HOAs who participated in this the last time. One of the comments was that the follow-up on, like, if there were questions from the in the reserve study, that there was no follow-up.
No.
Like they would go back and say, hey, I think
Cindy.
I don't know to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I think Cindy has acknowledged that there was problems with the.
With the entity
Yeah.
that did
So what
all
I was
of
going
them.
to say is maybe so if we already got it, maybe we need to ask, did you participate in the last one? Maybe we don't need to do that. If we already, just as long as we're cognizant of that for this time.
Definitely.
Very
No,
much.
yeah, we actually, because not on here, but I did this week. I was going to add a question just to provide comments as well.
Yeah.
So that'll be in there as well.
Rachel?
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this in our packet so we have a chance to comment. I think that makes a lot of difference. The thing that struck me is that as this letter or however goes out, is to maybe talk about what a capital reserve study will entail and what the value of it is. If you can do that in a couple paragraphs, because you're going to have new board members who've never done a capital reserve and doesn't know if they ever did a capital reserve. So
Right.
why would you even be interested? What does the term capital reserve study mean to people? So that has to be on there at some level to get their interest. There's a couple other things that I'm just wondering whether you already have like the year built. So you don't need to say what year was your complex built. But I don't want to lard it up either, but the only two things I was thinking was that the number of units in the HOA might be worth asking what the sizes are. We have 23 bedrooms and 10 two-bedrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
Or do we already have that information?
You already have that
So we can just
information.
plug a lot of that in afterwards. So that's what I was thinking. We have
And-
both year built and we have the types of units.
Yeah, and the main reason I'm still asking number of units is to just double check
Categorize
our
them later.
numbers, get an idea of how many units are going to be funded.
Okay, that makes sense. And then this was a great comment you just made. We should have a closing paragraph or something about what the follow-up would be, or how we anticipate
what's the
going
next
forward with this.
steps? Okay.
I'm also just wondering, and this is just totally optional, but if we're sending a letter out to 50 of our HOAs of 80, is it worth mentioning that there's a launched right sizing program? If you know of any of your residents who may be interested in, for people, it just might be a chance since we're sending something out and HOAs can let their people know. It's just, I'll leave it. It doesn't have to be done, but it's something for you guys to think about if it's worth contacting. and
Especially if
letting
we're
them know.
doing more outreach with HOAs down the road as well. There'll be other opportunities for
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, we really view this as
A singular-
a very small first step to a much
Sure.
better relationship with HOAs. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point is really well made about the benefit of
Introductory.
this, right? Like, because I think a lot of people
It sounds like
would
a
see this
hassle.
and say, well, I don't know, what is this? Like, what are you doing?
It's
like,
gonna get me in
no,
trouble.
this is gonna help you avoid
That's a really
large
good
special,
point.
special assessments in
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pay for it.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll
right?
bring
so,
them out
Or
here,
pay most
make
of
sure
it.
they're
Pay-
There have to be
qualified.
some
Right.
off-the-shelf products we can pull on what is a capital reserve. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I just
Yeah.
say APCHA,
Yeah.
like APCHA has an interest in the financial viability of all of our
Yeah, and
HOAs.
and to try and help HOAs avoid large unexpected special assessments.
Yeah.
And it's going to be of some value, I think, if there is any sort of program developed in the future to deal with the larger structural deficit on the issues. You know, whatever, you know, we've had, and I'm sure you all know, Centennial coming to our public comment for the past 2 months to talk about the city paying 100% of everything and all sorts of stuff flying around. But what I've said there and what I think is whatever happens there would be precedent setting. The lawyers on that case, if you just made a settlement with Centennial, probably take that lawsuit to the next HOA and say, how would you like to prosecute this with us? And look what we got for our last people. But it needs to be fair. It needs to be, somewhat universal. And it needs to include skin in the game from residents as much as anything else. And one of the first ways to get there is understanding how well-funded HOAs currently are. And the other thing that's made it very difficult, I would say, from a council or this board's position, is not really knowing what the monthly dues are, how much is going to just maintenance and how much is going to capital reserve, and how much are people mixing the two and thinking that standard maintenance is capital reserves and it's not. And yeah, so when somebody says we're paying way out of proportion, it's like, I don't know that. I don't know what other HOAs are paying for maintenance or for capital reserves. And we've got to get some better established baselines so that our homeowners understand that, you should be putting 3% of your unit's purchase price away a year for capital reserves or whatever that standard is. So I'm all for this and I appreciate the work going into that.
Yep.
There we go.
Great. Do you need anything from us, or is this just Allison?
So you in Home Track have the HOAs and a contact information for every one of them?
We do have a contact list right now, but
Is that mostly the management companies, do you think?
yeah, or who
Oh, because
or like board president, HOA presidents and things like that. But we just want to make sure that it's up to date because
Right. Yeah.
some of it might not be very current. Yeah.
Great. I think sending it to the management companies is going to be more effective. I agree with Rachel of cutting down things you already know, like the number of units, just so that it's faster. I want to make sure that number 8 is not like a disingenuous ask. If APCHA covered the cost, would you be interested in administering a capital reserve study in the next year? Because there's been a time when the capital reserve study was in exchange for updating all the deed restrictions or the HOA coming into compliance in other ways. So I think if in the end what you're going to do is require something extra, you have to ask that here, or you're going to get a different set of
That's
answers.
not what this
Okay.
is.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure. That
And it
number 8
wasn't the last time either. It was if we created a program where the city and the county were gonna help with funds, they had to do this. They had to get a capital reserve study done if they wanted to be involved in any future program. It wasn't changing the deed restriction or anything.
And that's not what this is.
That
this
is
time.
not what this is.
No.
I would say maybe change administering to partnering, because then it sort of
oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
creates, like,
a
you're
good-
gonna have some onus here.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's to provide documents or
We can change
answer the
that, yeah.
phone or,
Very good.
something.
That's a very good edit. I like that.
And did you say how many people did participate last time?
Last time was 29 HOAs. Yeah, and benefit of this is hopefully all those same HOAs will participate again. We'll have a clear comparison, 2011, 2023, 24.
And everybody's much healthier. And
Yes.
We hope.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so then for the next two items, the executive session.
Can you do the first, what I would suggest, and hopefully Tom's okay with this, the public hearing on the appeals, if somebody could just move to change that. We have a date for that, June 7th, 2023. So if somebody could just do a motion to reschedule that public hearing for that date, that would be great.
I just
Yeah,
noticed the one
all you'd
member
have to do is
in
move to
audience had a
continue
comment
the-
on that last time.
Oh.
That agenda item to June 7th.
Or question.
No,
Real quick,
And by way of,
Continue both.
by way of explanation, the parties, the primary parties involved, the two entities involved, the Music Associates of Aspen and Highlands Village LLC, agreed to continue it to that date. And as far as I can see, there's no adverse effect on APCHA if those two parties are in agreement on postponing.
okay. Ward, did you have something on this, or was it on the last?
The last one, if I may.
That would be just the last one, and if that passes, the need for the executive session as described can be dropped, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I am requesting that you go into executive session on the other case.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to make a comment on that, on the HOA survey. I was involved in that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's allows me to remember how long ago that was. But the question I think came up then, and is this information going to be public information, or can we assure HOAs that this is private information? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, it should be public, because if you win a unit and you are not properly funded, that should be disclosed.
And you're referring to when the studies are conducted. If that becomes public information, the results from the studies?
Yeah, you
Okay.
have a HOA reserve study, and there you can have 29 or 50 different ones, and that the members of that HOA can be assured that it is going to be private. It's not going to be public information for this board to decide what is appropriate. I think that you'll get fewer people or more people involved in it if they know that it's going to be private, that all kinds of people in the community will have access to what their cap reserve studies have shown.
And I think in the past, because it's financial information, that it wasn't put out to the public. If somebody's purchasing a unit and they go under contract, they have the right to that. But that's different than it being out in the public itself.
Yeah, okay. That would be standard for any HOA that you're buying into. If it was a free market condo, at that point, you would
You get that information.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ward. That was
Thanks,
great.
Ward. Okay, so then,
Carson, I have to comment on that because of Cora.
okay,
I'm not, personal, individual financial information is confidential, but I mean, I'm just shooting from the hip here. I haven't had a chance to look into this, but I don't think we can guarantee that an entity's financial information, it might have to be disclosed if there's a Cora request.
I would think especially if government funds are helping obtain that.
That's right. Yeah, so I don't want anybody to, I just don't want anybody to be misled. We don't have to advertise it in the first instance, right? But I'm just saying, if someone asks for it, a member of the public asks for it, it could be that we have to disclose it.
I would request your legal analysis of that to come back with more definitive. Just because, like in the water world, even though water purveyors get grants all the time. Trying to access, their financials has proven to be very difficult.
Okay?
So
I'll
I'm
look
not
into that.
sure,
Come back
so this just seems like a bit of a parallel example here.
Fine.
So I think it would be great to get a more clear legal analysis
I'll
on
do
that.
that.
I don't think that has to stop this work of serving the HOAs, because we haven't put together the capital reserve program to partner with them on yet. We're just gauging interest.
Yeah, I agree entirely with Kelly. I was going to ask for more research as well. But the other thing to do is think about whether it can be formatted in such a way that it's a work product of the board that we're being able to use for research and work product purposes, and therefore it's a little more protected as well, or any other venue in which we could protect it.
That would be the deliberative process privilege. I'll look into it from that standpoint as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so then for the last two items on the agenda here, the executive session for conference with attorney on purpose of receiving legal advice under CRS section 246402-4B regarding the public hearing on appeal of Highlands Villas LLC. Would just move to.
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion to move the public hearing on appeal of Highlands Villas LLC from the finding of fact, conclusions of law, and ruling of APCHA hearing officer to be held on June 7th, 2023.
Oh, second.
All right, and that is a roll call vote.
Okay. John? John?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye, sorry, I had to.
That's okay. Carson?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Okay, and then
I
we
have
are
that.
wanting to change the nature of the executive session. That's,
motion, I have that language.
okay.
And it starts for the purpose of.
Okay. We will change the nature of the executive session that was prior scheduled to a different purpose, which is now the purpose of legal advice through Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-402 4B regarding procedures to be followed in the appeal by Dr. David Singer of the decision of the hearing officer affirming the termination of his lease. The merits of the case, as I understand, will not be discussed at all. Simply the procedure process the board will be following.
Correct. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Before the vote, I will let you know that I will not be hearing this appeal, and I will not stay for the executive session
Okay.
because of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Slipping out.
I know.
Hey, I didn't set it up this way.
I
You
know.
guys
We timed
did.
the cake and the balloons for the end of the.
Yeah. Okay.
Will we still have a quorum?
Yes, once a quorum is set, we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Well, I
to,
would want quorum for this. Actually, it's not an action item, so we're okay. We're okay.
we don't need you to get out of the executive session. We'll be stuck in it forever without approving.
Okay.
No, that would be cruel, wouldn't it?
So, okay, Allison?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Carson?
Yes.
John? John?
Aye, sorry, my
Thank you.
wife's on a flight and got canceled.
Okay.
Recording stopped.
So we're gonna
All right.
stop for about 5 minutes to.
Let's